WHIP Radio in Philadelphia. We're getting you ready for the Boca Raton Bowl between Temple and Toledo that comes your way on Tuesday night. And a man that will be on the call for ESPN is the former head coach of Boise State and Colorado. That is Dan Hawkins. Coach Zach Gelb, thanks for a few minutes, and how are you?
You betcha. I'm doing great, thank you.
Well, thanks for coming on, and as a bowl game, it's always a fun time of the year because this is what these players look for the entire course of the season, and what they fight for in the summer is to get that week enjoying a bowl game, having fun with the teammates, and then, of course, going out there and winning the game. As your time at Boise State and Colorado, what do you remember about going to bowl games?
Well, I think it's a great time to celebrate your season. It's a great time to get your young guys some work. I think it's a real benefit for developing all your younger players, and then I think again it's just a capper to your season. And one of the things that's been very interesting to me is I know at Boise State every time we win our guys were fired up, and at Colorado our guys were fired up to go too. But it's interesting in this day and age when you've got a lot of interim coaches, and sometimes you have teams that had bigger aspirations and didn't quite pan out, and it's sort of a little bit inconceivable to me that a team would not have a ton of motivation. But it's just interesting as you look at the landscape of college football, because you have a lot of coaches leaving and coming and going, and maybe, like I said, some aspirations that weren't met, and maybe you don't have the same kind of motivation that you think you ought to.
Temple obviously wanted to play in the Peach Bowl or the Fiesta Bowl, and they didn't go out there and beat a team like Houston in the American Athletic Conference championship game. There's sometimes distractions that come with bowl games, or even sometimes there's a team, like you were saying, that wants to play in a bigger bowl and didn't get there, or the interim coaching factor like you're seeing right now with the new coach of Toledo and Jason Candle. As a head coach, how do you keep that focus during the bowl week to go out there and win the game and end your season on a high note?
Yeah, it's a fine line. There's no question. You've got to get in your work and have your focus. Understand that you're playing to win, but at the same time you're trying to enjoy it and not grind them. I think a lot of times it's a reflection really of your program and how you run things on a day-to-day basis. And I think if you're in the valley on top of the mountain a lot of times during your season, maybe that can be reflected in the bowl game, I think. But if you kind of stay in there and come back every week with trying to stay sharp and get better, you have a little better chance in the bowl season.
Temple's one win away from having the most wins in program history. That would be at 11. They currently sit at 10-3. Matt Rhule has been a young, hot coaching commodity around the nation so far, but he's going to stay at Temple. He has a new contract that extends him for 6 years and gives him a bump in the salary. What have been your impressions of Matt Rhule when you watch him?
Well, he's obviously done a great job. He really has. Beating Penn State and doing what he's done there, and it's really taken off. Good guy. Know him a little bit, not a lot. We've had a couple Temple games in the past. But I think he's a really good person that cares about his players. Obviously, good football pedigree, and a guy that understands, the full balance of what it takes to win games and score more points than your opponent, and also do it in the right way.
Before that American Athletic Conference championship game, it was right after the UConn game when they punched their ticket to that title game. There was a report out there that Matt was interviewing for the Missouri job. You've been in situations when you've been looked at for another job. How did you handle that?
Oh, my gosh. It's painful. It really is. It's absolutely painful. I didn't really like it at all. It's a distraction to your team. It's a distraction to you. You're trying to be honest to your players and your fans and your media, and at the same time you're trying to. There's a lot of bullets that always fly, and some of them are not even close to hitting the target, so you don't even really worry about them, and then others come closer. But I really dreaded it. I really did. I hate all that. I hate any distractions as it is, and you're trying to focus on getting the first down, and you've got all of your guys that you've been working with all year long. It's not fun. I mean, it's part of the process, but boy, I'll tell you what, I hated every second of it.
We're spending a few minutes with Dan Hawkins, the former coach at Boise State and Colorado. He will be doing the Temple game on Tuesday night in the Boca Raton Bowl between Temple and Toledo. And you know this, whenever you're not a Power 5 school, everyone talks about the level of respect. Temple's gone through a lot this year, and they've done pretty well. Where do you think their level of respect is nationally?
Well, I think a lot of it is just proven over time a little bit. I don't think Matt really worries about that. We never got into that. I think that's a word that's kind of tossed around. But I don't think you can worry about that. As a coach or as a team, it's not, you're trying to be as good as you can be and play as well as you can be. And whether people respect you or don't respect you or think you're good or don't think you're good, you can't control that. You really can't get into that. But I think people have an appreciation really for the kind of football that's been played in the American this year, because it has been very good, and there's been a lot of teams that have really surfaced in the top 25, and it'll be interesting to see this matchup in the bowl season. And I know some people discount it, say, "Oh, it doesn't count." I think it does count. I think it does matter. I think it does show a little bit about the quality of your conference and what do all those mean? Those games mean. And clearly, you look at a Boise State who's had some success in the bowl season. That's where people kind of measure up and kind of go, well, yeah, they played a Pac-12 team, they beat them. They played a Big 12 team, they beat them. And I think you have a little bit more reputation for those wins during the conference.
And on the other sideline, you have a coach in Jason Candle, is going to be his first game as a head coach for the Toledo Rockets, replacing Matt Campbell. What do you look for early when you have a new head coach? Although Candle, I should say, is familiar with the program.
Yeah, I think he'll do pretty much what they've been doing in the past. I don't expect a whole lot of deviation. It's interesting because Matt Campbell he's an O-lineman. And, of course, Toledo runs the football, and they're very good at running the football and got a two-headed monster there. Will they loosen up a little bit and throw the ball a little bit more with Ely? You don't know, but I wouldn't expect a big departure from what they do.
Coach, let's get to Tyler Medikevich. He's the Nagurski and the Chuck Bednarik Award winner that goes to the top player in the country. When you watch Tyler on film, because Tyler's not from those Power 5 schools, but he's made his name in those big primetime spots. What kind of player do you see in Tyler Medikevich?
He's a baller. We had him a couple years ago. I think the first time I saw him was a couple years ago against UConn, and he really is. He's just a football player. Not the biggest, not the fastest, but you watch him, he's real disciplined. He knows how to put his body in situations. He knows where the ball's going. He's obviously got a high football IQ. Plays with good pad level. Plays with a great motor. And he really is a pleasure to watch. And you look at that whole defense that Phil Snow has going. They all play hard, and they got great motors, and that makes them, so special. But he's a guy that he's just a football player. We had Kellen Moore playing for the Cowboys last night from Boise State, and he's not the biggest, he's not the fastest, he doesn't have the strongest arm, but he's a football player. And he understands how to play football, and he's got a high IQ, and he gets it. And I think Tyler's very much the same way.
And he's had an illustrious career here at Temple, being one out of 7 players in the history of NCAA football to have 100 tackles in each of his 4 seasons. He's 11 away from tying Steve Conjar for the most career tackles in Temple University history. And we hear projections all the time since this is his last game at the next level. And we've heard predictions anywhere from 2 to 5 in the draft. Where do you project him to go in the NFL draft?
Who knows? I always love the quote-unquote expert. All it takes is one guy to really like him. You look at Luke Kuechly, who a few years ago when he was at Boston College, again, a guy that made a lot of plays, made a lot of tackles, wasn't really projecting out that high based off, the quote-unquote measurements. But he had one team that liked him, and you had Ron Rivera, who was a former linebacker himself, and, look at the level that he's playing at in the National Football League. And so that's really all it takes is one person to like him. But I think you're right. I think he could go anywhere in that round. And he finds some guy that believes in strong defense, he'll take him early.
Let's take you in the head of Toledo. This Temple defense is obviously pretty darn good, but Toledo has a good offense themselves. Temple's kryptonite has been going up against the mobile quarterback. Philip Ely isn't really that much of a mobile quarterback. If you were Toledo, how would you target this Temple defense?
Well, you got to keep doing what you're doing. Like I said, I don't think you're going to deviate a whole bunch. They do have some explosive playmakers outside. You're right. I mean, I think Philip will run it a little bit at times when he has to, when he needs to, but that's not the way they're built. They are a power run football team. They're not a zone team like a lot of teams that get in a one-back set. They're going to block down. They're going to kick out. They're going to pull people. They're going to and I think that's, they're going to stick with that formula.
Now, on the other side of the ball for Temple, their offense struggled in Houston in that American Athletic Conference championship game. They could move the ball on their side of the field, but once they got into opponent territory, they really couldn't do anything, and the 2 turnovers killed them in that game. When you see Temple's offense, what are your impressions, and how do you think they match up against this Toledo defense?
Well, I really love P.J. Walker. I really do. I think he's got great speed. I think he can really spin it. I really like the guy a bunch. Matt's kind of gone more to a more of a power run situation this year. Of course, Shahad is a very electric player as well, but I don't expect their formula to change. They're very good on defense. They're very good in special teams. I would expect Matt to, again, run the ball. Don't turn it over. Don't hurt yourself. Don't lose the game. And then, allow for some plays from your defense and your special teams to kind of crack it open.
The offensive line did not play well their last time out up against Houston, and this is a pretty good offensive line, and if they're going to want to run the ball, they're going to need that push in the trenches, obviously. How do you expect the offensive line? Do you think they bounce back this week?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think this front four of Toledo is pretty awesome. I really do. I think they're loaded. They got good size. They got good strength. I think that's going to be a tough battle for them. I don't know if they're going to push them around a little bit, but they got to get in front of them enough for PJ to be able to do something and give Jihad a little bit of a crack. But we've had Houston as well, and I know they're a very good defensive front. But I think Toledo is right in that same category.
Coach Dan Hawkins joins us. And Coach, last one here right before we let you go, as we're getting ready for Temple and Toledo that comes your way on Tuesday night in the Boca Raton Bowl. You have the title of my favorite rant in maybe the history of sports with your Division I football rant when you were at Colorado. How many times do people still bring that up to you? And what memories come to mind when people come up to you and say, it's Division I football, go play intramurals, brother?
It wasn't really a rant. That's the thing. I think it's in modern media, everybody jumps on that. If you're around me, I am a passionate guy. We were kind of talking after a media thing. To me, it's kind of what goes on in media. I mean, things get taken and run with, and people ask me, were I embarrassed about it? Was I mad about it? I was neither, but I loved sort of the misinterpretation, and there were friends of mine that said, oh, yeah, I saw you on TV. I said, you didn't see me. And they said, yeah, I did. I saw you. And I said, no, there's no video. But, I mean, again, that's the thing that's funny is, people are just adamant that, and I said, no, you heard it, but you didn't see it. No, I saw you. I mean, friends of mine, I go, you go back and look at it and see if you see me. But again, it's kind of what goes on in our society today. People jump with something and they run with things, or things go viral. And like I said, I'm a very passionate guy, and I can be boisterous certainly at times. And we were kind of sitting around afterwards yucking it up, and one of our local media guys had taped it, and he had it on his radio deal for about 2 weeks, and then somebody caught it and run with it. But it is what it is. But it's the society we live in today. But it's like I said, it was kind of all misinterpreted. And to me, a rant is when you're and the people that know me, when I get really mad, I can't even hardly talk. My jaw will clench up, and I can't hardly even get words out when I get really mad. So kind of a misinterpretation, really.
You're right. There is actually no video of it, because I remember it was the Best Damn Sports Show, period. They just played the audio of it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's all there is. But like I said, people are convinced. But that's why I say you kind of realize the the whole era that we're in these days, and how people take things and run with things, and how they really think they saw things, but they really didn't see things. I mean, the whole thing was very interesting to me.
Well, now I got to really figure out, because I've been lied to my whole life. I thought it was a rant, so now I have to figure out who's the best rant in sports history. But that'll be a topic of conversation for another day. Dan Hawkins, great job out of you, and we'll see you Tuesday for the Boca Raton Bowl. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, buddy.